Hello, hello. Okay, as Roy said, I was going to talk about bridging the skills gap, but it feels very HR-y, feels like I'm going to talk about talent gaps in the market and things like that, and I want to move away from that slightly. So we're going to talk about security through a different lens, and I'll come back to the skills gap as we go. Now, whilst I appreciate this is distracting behind me, it's part of the message, which is when we're delivering through partners, we need to have all of the teams behind the scenes working smoothly, all of the functions that deliver to those partners working smoothly, to allow partners to deliver those services with the confidence that what's behind is actually running the way it should be. And as we go through that, I think the thing I wanted to kind of really focus on is if you talk about partner delivery in the two kind of traditional ways, and one of the challenges of how we do that. So on the left-hand side, you have transactional partner delivery or transactional customer relationship. Kind of pilot high, buy a blue box. The blue box is the only box you can buy. And there's no variations in that. So you can ask for changes and you can ask for slight modifications, but pilot high, you get the blue box, that's the way it is. At the other end of the relationship, in the relationship-driven customer side, if you like, is the high-touch, bespoke, boutique-type businesses that will do anything you ask them. So you don't get the blue box, you can have different shades, you can have a different color lid, you can have whatever you need. And the problem with both sides of this is relationship-driven businesses often find it difficult to scale because you can't have enough warm bodies on seats to deliver all those variations you need. On the transactional side, you're not flexible enough to fill the market need that you've got that's being demanded by your end customers. So where we sit and what we're trying and succeeding in building within WithSecure is bridging that gap. I said we'd come back to that. So when you take services through our platforms and through the operational delivery that we have, you can join that kind of security journey anywhere along the line. Now, let's talk about a high regulation, high risk environment, you might want high touch, where you can get top of the range response engineers or response analysts or threat intelligence guys on the right-hand side of the picture. You might have smaller scale. You don't need all of that stuff. You need perhaps to know that you can pick up the phone, and you've heard it earlier about pressing elevate to try and speak to someone when you need it, but you don't need that always on service. And the way we've built the services, and we'll talk about this after my session when Tamu's talking about MDR, which sits in the middle of this gap, is you can take as much or as little as you need to. So it's about utilizing our resources to fulfill your client's needs through the partner channel and making sure you get the appropriate level. So you're not having to oversell, you're not having to undersell, you're almost getting it just right. And all of that is backed up by the threat intelligence teams, the research teams, the incident response guys. And these are highly advanced guys. So this is nation-state investigations that we're doing. The threat intelligence that we pull down is world-class, and they're feeding that into the system. And the thing that we've potentially avoided is the two cars on here, and there is a reason for me to put these two cars on here. So on the right-hand side, you have a Noble. Does 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds. It's, by all words, a supercar. On the left-hand side is a Volvo, an S80, perfectly adequate family car. I couldn't find a Finnish car. I had to use one from just over the border in Sweden. But the thing about these two cars, high performance on the right, 3.5 seconds, practical car on the left. Both have exactly the same engine under the hood. And it's not same size engine, it's not similar engine, it's the identical engine. And the message I'm trying to get into here is it doesn't matter where on that journey you take services from, whether it's co-security at the bottom end through co-monitoring, whether it's through the MDR, the MDR, and then the countercept pieces at the top, all powered by the same engine. So the detections and the investigation and the knowledge that we learn from all of our consultants, from all of our threat intel guys, from all of the incidents that we respond to, all gets piped into the product. So you're getting the same benefit all the way through. So same engine underneath. Now, what does that mean in terms of the actual products? And I'm sure if you've sat through a couple of these demos today, you would have seen a few examples of this. And we start, ironically, at the top or the bottom of the service, depending on how you want to take that perspective of the journey, with Elevate, which is the on-demand, speak to someone when you need to speak to someone, press the button and get the discussion going, through co-monitoring, through managed detection and response, which again, Tamu will follow me on stage and give you a bit more in depth about, because we've released and worked on that this year, up through incident response. And I touched on how good our guys are. So in incident response, as an example, we are certified in the UK to work on critical national infrastructure. So again, it's about applying that knowledge that we learn in the big cases to all of the cases that we deal with, to all of the detection that we look at. Exposure management has been mentioned a few times today. Hopefully you've picked up the message that we've launched exposure management today. Again, another advance forward. And then countercept. So countercept is the always-on MDR with threat hunting in the background and peacetime threat hunting that kind of goes on into the environment whilst nothing else is being picked up. So we're looking at all the detections and everything else. And I think the message about the world's best experts on demand rings true. It doesn't matter, again, where you go on the scale of taking perhaps co-monitoring or countercept. You're getting the best in the business feeding into that engine and powering that whole journey. So I wanted to just kind of underline a piece at the end here, and it's, for those old enough in the audience, you'll remember graphic equalizers. For half of you, you'll frown at me and not remember what a graphic equalizer looks like, but the idea that you can turn these services up and down depending on your need. So as we go through the kind of proactive on the left-hand side, the exposure management, MDR and countercept, so ASM as well in there, so that's part of exposure as well. So looking at what's going on in the network all of the time, making sure we see what's going on. On the right-hand side, and you'll see countercept pops up twice. Countercept is also reactive in terms of MDR, so looking at detections, seeing how they feed in, making sure that we highlight where there's problems, speak to the customers, same on MDR, and then the same with co-monitoring. And then in the middle, incident response and Elevate. So press button, pick up phone, talk to our experts. And I think in terms of that kind of volume slider, whilst we have IR and Elevate sat at the peak in the middle, that might be a different way for a different customer. So the model we're trying to get to, and I'd again argue we're succeeding in as we do these new releases and we continue to iterate, is you take as much or as little as you need to take to suit the need of the end customer. Not all end customers are the same. Not all partners are the same. Not all partners have the same level of expertise. Some have more, some have less. But you take the amount that you need to serve the need of that particular customer. So I think in closing, again, the message that I want to carry through is twofold. There is a skills gap in cybersecurity, and we're here to help fill that skills gap on behalf of the partners and the customers. So we're there to add as much or as little as the partner needs to be able to serve that customer need at the end of the day. So if you carry one thing away, it's the graphic equalizer. And if you haven't seen a graphic equalizer before, go away and look one up. But at this point, I will hand over to Tamu to come and talk about MDR.